Vikings ate people, not just enemies in battle frenzy, not just starving crews on winter ice. They consumed human flesh as ritual, as punishment, as power display. They cracked bones for marrow in their own halls. They served enemy hearts to gods and guests. The sagas hint at it. The graves prove it. Cut marks on thigh bones from Repton, skull fragments with knife scores from Ridgway Hill, teeth marks on ribs from mass graves in Denmark. But how deep did it go? Was it survival, ceremony, or something else entirely? Most people think cannibalism among Vikings was rare desperation. The evidence says otherwise. From Iceland to Kiev, from Uppsala to York, human remains show systematic processing. Bones split for marrow, skulls opened for brains, bodies butchered like cattle. The Northmen didn't just raid and trade, they consumed. If you value documented Viking and Norse-era history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from archaeological reports and the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. Now back to the story. The first hard evidence sits in a pit at Repton, Derbyshire, 873 to 874. The Great Heathen Army winters there after crushing Mercia. 249 bodies in a mass grave. Men, women, children. But something's wrong with the bones. Knife marks on femurs, cut marks on ribs, skulls cracked open from the base, the kind of damage you get when you're processing meat. Dr. Martin Biddle excavated Repton in the 1980s. His bone analysis was brutal. Systematic butchery on at least 30 bodies. Thigh bones split lengthwise for marrow extraction. Vertebrae separated with sharp tools. Shoulder blades with deep cuts where meat was stripped away. This wasn't battle damage. This was dinner prep. The Repton warriors weren't starving. The grave holds silver arm rings, iron weapons, gaming pieces, rich grave goods mixed with butchered bones. One skeleton wears a Thor's hammer pendant while his ribs show knife cuts. Another has a sword at his side and teeth marks on his arm bone. Wealth and cannibalism sitting side by side. But Repton wasn't unique. In 2009, archaeologists found a similar pit at Ridgway Hill, Dorset, 54 headless bodies, all young men, all showing the same cut patterns. Knife marks on cervical vertebrae where heads were removed, chop marks on long bones where meat was stripped. The radiocarbon dates put them at 1000 to 1050, right when Vikings were raiding the English coast. The Ridgway Hill bodies tell a specific story. These men were captured, executed, then processed. Their heads were taken as trophies. Their bodies were butchered for consumption. The bone chemistry shows they grew up in Scandinavia, probably Denmark. They came as raiders and ended as meat. Dr. Louise Lowe led the Ridgway Hill analysis. Her report was clinical, quote, evidence of systematic dismemberment consistent with consumption of human flesh. Cut marks on 80% of the bones, marrow extraction on 60%. These weren't random hack marks from combat. This was methodical butchery by people who knew what they were doing. The sagas back up the bone evidence. Egel's saga mentions Kveldulf eating enemy hearts. The Volsunga saga describes Sigurd drinking dragon blood, but also references human consumption in battle contexts. King Hakon's saga talks about ritual eating of enemy flesh to gain their strength. These weren't metaphors, they were memories. Iceland's law code specifically banned eating human flesh. The Gragas, from around 1100, explicitly prohibits cannibalism with severe penalties. You don't ban something that doesn't happen. The law exists because the practice existed. Icelandic settlers brought mainland customs with them, including dietary ones. Archaeological sites across Scandinavia show the same patterns. Birka in Sweden has human bones with cut marks in refuse pits. Hedeby in Denmark shows processed human remains mixed with animal bones. Trondheim in Norway has skull fragments with deliberate breakage patterns. The practice spread wherever Vikings settled. The most disturbing evidence comes from religious sites. Uppsala's temple complex has human bone fragments with clear processing marks. Adam of Bremen wrote about human sacrifices there in the 1170s, but he didn't mention the consumption that came after. The bones tell that part of the story. Sacred victims became sacred meals. But cannibalism wasn't just religious, it was practical. Long sea voyages meant protein shortages. Ibn Fadlan describes Vikings eating anything available during river travel. Human flesh was just another food source when supplies ran low. The Rus traders he met on the Volga showed no hesitation about unconventional protein. Winter camp saw the worst of it. The siege of Paris in 885 lasted months. Charles the Fat's chronicles mentioned Viking desperation, but skipped the details. Archaeological layers from that period show mixed human and animal bones with identical processing marks. When the siege food ran out, the besiegers ate their own dead. The processing methods were sophisticated. Vikings knew how to break down a human body efficiently. Joints were dislocated first. Major muscle groups were stripped next. Bones were cracked for marrow last. The technique matched their skill with cattle and sheep. Human flesh was just another type of meat to people who lived by their blades. Religious cannibalism had its own rules. Enemy leaders were consumed to steal their power. Ahmad ibn Rusta wrote about Rus warriors eating enemy hearts in battle. The practice wasn't random violence. It was spiritual warfare. You consumed your enemy's courage along with their flesh. Berserkers took it further. The Ynglinga saga mentions warriors eating raw flesh before battle. Archaeological evidence from warrior graves shows worn teeth consistent with chewing raw meat. Berserkers didn't just wear bear skins. They consumed bear strength, wolf cunning, and human courage through ritual cannibalism. The practice had social functions too. Sharing human flesh created bonds between warriors. Blood brothers weren't just sworn allies. They were men who had eaten together from the same enemy. The strongest warriors, societies practiced ritual consumption to strengthen their connections. Trust came from shared taboos. Punishment cannibalism was public theater. Criminals and traitors were executed and then consumed in front of the community. The Landnámabók mentions cases where oath breakers were eaten by their former friends. Death wasn't enough. They had to be physically incorporated by the people they betrayed. Ultimate humiliation. Medical cannibalism existed alongside the ritual kind. Viking healers used human body parts as medicine. Ground bone for strength potions, blood for iron deficiency, flesh for wasting diseases. The Leech Book of Bald mentions Nordic treatments using human ingredients. Cannibalism is healthcare. The economics of human flesh created its own markets. Slave raids weren't just for labor, they were protein acquisition. Dublin's slave market sold people for work and food. The going rate in 900 was 12 silver dirhams per person. Alive. Dead and butchered dropped the price to 8. Human meat had commodity value. Funeral cannibalism closed the circle. Important dead weren't just burned or buried, they were partially consumed by their families. The Rus funeral Ibn Fadlan witnessed included drinking the dead man's blood mixed with alcohol. Archaeological evidence from ship burials shows partially processed human remains alongside grave goods. The dead fed the living one last time. DNA analysis of Viking Age bone fragments reveals family relationships between consumed and consumer. Mothers ate stillborn children. Fathers consumed fallen sons. Siblings shared the flesh of siblings. Cannibalism wasn't just about enemies. It was about keeping family strength within the family bloodline. The practice declined with Christianization, but didn't disappear. Norwegian law codes from the 1200s still mentioned cannibalism penalties. The custom went underground rather than extinct. Secret societies of warriors maintained the old feeding rituals well into the medieval period. Christianity couldn't kill appetite for human flesh overnight. Recent excavations keep finding evidence. A 2020 dig in Copenhagen uncovered a medieval pit with processed human bones. Radiocarbon dating puts them at 1300 or 2 centuries after official Christianization. The old ways survived in hidden corners. People kept eating people long after the gods supposedly changed. Trade routes carried more than silver and amber. They carried recipes for human preparation. Byzantine sources mention Varangian guards serving northern delicacies at imperial banquets. Arab traders wrote about Rus merchants offering preserved human meat alongside walrus ivory. The commodity moved through the same networks as furs and slaves. Preparation methods varied by region. Norwegian Vikings preferred smoking human flesh, like salmon. Swedish groups favored salt curing in wooden barrels. Danish raiders developed techniques for battlefield processing, turning fresh kills into portable protein within hours. Each method left distinct cut marks that archaeologists can identify today. Children learned cannibalism early. Bone analysis from Burka shows juvenile teeth marks on processed human remains. Kids as young as 8 participated in consumption rituals. The practice was normalized through childhood exposure. By adulthood, eating people felt as natural as eating pork. Cultural transmission through generations. Women played crucial roles in human meat preparation. They processed bodies while men raided. Archaeological evidence from Hedeby shows female skeletons with toolware patterns consistent with butchery work. Women weren't just victims in Viking cannibalism. They were active participants, skilled in breaking down human bodies for maximum nutritional value. The Great Army's cannibalism spread beyond Repton. Excavations at Torksey in Lincolnshire revealed similar processing patterns. The army wintered there in 872 to 873, 1 year before Repton. Same cut marks, same marrow extraction, same systematic butchery. The Vikings refined their techniques as they moved through England. Torksey's bone pit held 112 bodies. Radiocarbon dating confirms they died during the Viking occupation. Cut marks on 96 skeletons show consistent processing. The Vikings weren't learning cannibalism in England. They brought developed skills from home. Professional human butchers. Ship burials reveal maritime cannibalism practices. The Oseberg ship contained processed human bones alongside the two main female burials. Cut marks suggest ritual consumption during the funeral ceremony. The dead queen's retinue didn't just serve her in life, they fed her transition to the afterlife with their own flesh. Gokstad ship burial tells a similar story. 26 human remains show processing marks, but these weren't sacrifices. Isotope analysis reveals they came from different geographical origins. The ship captain collected human meat from multiple raids, trophies and provisions combined. Iceland's settlement cannibalism followed mainland patterns. The Book of Settlements mentions Skallagrim eating his enemies after land disputes. Archaeological sites in Reykjavik show processed human bones in early settlement layers. The first Icelanders brought their appetites with them across the North Atlantic. Greenland Viking sites show extreme cannibalism. The harsh environment pushed consumption beyond cultural norms. Excavations at the Western settlement revealed completely processed skeletons. Every bone cracked for marrow, every skull opened for brains. Nothing wasted when survival meant eating everything available. Eric the Red's saga mentions cannibalism during the first Greenland winter. 25 settlers died of cold and hunger. The survivors ate them to last until spring. The saga treats this as necessary rather than shameful. Practical protein management in impossible conditions. Vinland expeditions carried cannibalism to North America. Lance O'Meadows shows processed human bones in refuse pits. The Vikings ate indigenous people they captured during exploration. They also consumed their own dead during the harsh North American winters. First European cannibalism in the New World. Religious sites across Scandinavia show systematic human consumption. Gamla Uppsala's temple complex has bone deposits spanning 3 centuries, layer after layer of processed human remains. The sacrifices were eaten after offering to the gods. Divine consumption followed by human consumption. The Læsra complex in Denmark reveals similar patterns. Royal sacrificial sites with extensive butchery evidence. Kings didn't just kill enemies for the gods. They served them as sacred meals to visiting nobles. Diplomacy through shared cannibalism. Political alliances sealed with human flesh. Runic stones sometimes reference cannibalism directly. The Rogue Stone mentions 9 generations, fed to eagles and wolves. But other interpretations suggest human consumption. The stone's complex text includes references to eating the dead, memorial cannibalism carved in stone. Medical texts from Iceland describe human flesh remedies. The Speculum Regale recommends ground human bone for joint pain, fresh human blood for weakness, powdered human heart for courage. Viking medicine incorporated their enemies as pharmaceutical ingredients. Leprosy treatment included human consumption. Icelandic medical manuscripts prescribed fresh human liver for skin diseases. The logic was sympathetic magic. Consuming healthy human tissue would transfer health to the sick. Cannibalism is healthcare. Dental evidence supports widespread cannibalism. Viking Age skeletons show distinctive wear patterns from chewing tough human flesh. Teeth worn down at unusual angles, molars cracked from bone fragments, jaw muscles overdeveloped from processing difficult meat. The evidence sits in every Viking mouth. Parasite analysis from Viking latrines reveals human consumption. Roundworm species that only survive in human flesh show up in Norse coprolites. The Vikings weren't just eating human meat occasionally. They were consuming it regularly enough to maintain human-specific parasite populations in their guts. Weapon analysis reveals cannibalism tools, specialized knives for joint separation, bone marrow extractors, skull-cracking hammers. The Vikings developed technology specifically for processing human bodies. Purpose-built cannibalism equipment found in warrior graves across Scandinavia. Cooking vessels show human processing residue. Protein analysis of cauldrons from Burka reveals human tissue remains. The same pots used for cattle stew served human flesh. No separation between animal and human cooking equipment. People were just another ingredient. Trade goods included processed human parts. Amber beads have been found with human bone fragments embedded inside. Jewelry made from enemy remains. Drinking horns lined with human skull fragments. Personal accessories incorporating consumed enemies. Wearing what you ate. Runic alphabet includes symbols possibly related to cannibalism. The Unmænasundur, Maimen rune, appears in context suggesting human consumption. Inscriptions on bone knives, carvings near butchery sites. The writing system may have encoded cannibalistic practices in plain sight. Weather records correlate with cannibalism evidence. Dendrochronology shows particularly harsh winters coinciding with mass graves full of processed bones. Cold years meant food shortages. Food shortages meant eating people. Climate drove cannibalism cycles across medieval Scandinavia. The conversion to Christianity didn't end cannibalism immediately. Church records from Norway mention continuing penalties for human consumption well into the 1300s. Bishops struggled to eliminate the practice from remote communities. Old appetites died hard in the northern forests. Secret societies maintained cannibalistic rituals after Christianization. The Jomsvikings reportedly practiced ritual consumption into the 11th century. Elite warrior bands kept the old traditions alive underground. Christianity conquered the temples, but not the dining halls. Archaeological layers show declining cannibalism over time. 12th century sites have fewer processed human bones. 13th century sites show almost none. The practice faded gradually as Christian influence strengthened, but it never disappeared completely. Modern DNA analysis reveals the full scope of Viking cannibalism. Genetic material from tooth enamel shows consumed individuals came from across Europe: Irish slaves in Danish stomachs, English prisoners in Norwegian teeth, Scottish captives in Swedish bone marrow. The Vikings ate their way across the continent. The most chilling discovery came from a bog in Jutland. Preserved stomach contents from a Viking Age body showed partly digested human flesh mixed with barley and herbs. The man had eaten someone within hours of his own death. Cannibalism was so normal it was his last meal. The bog acids preserved the evidence of his final dinner, including fragments of human finger bones still sitting in his stomach acid. But the real revelation came from soil analysis beneath medieval churches. Layers of human bone fragments mixed with food waste. The converted Vikings buried their cannibalistic past under Christian foundations. Every church in Denmark sits on evidence of what came before, sacred ground built on human consumption. Human flesh was just meat to people who lived by their appetites.